The United States, a nation built on the principles of free speech and political dissent, finds itself grappling with a troubling trend: the deportation of pro-Palestinian activists. Recent events have sent shockwaves through academic and activist communities, raising concerns about the erosion of fundamental rights in the name of national security and foreign policy interests. The cases, marked by allegations of government overreach and targeted persecution, have ignited a fierce debate about the limits of dissent and the U.S. government's unwavering support for Israel. This essay delves into the recent deportations, focusing on the case of Mahmoud Khalil, a Palestinian graduate student at Columbia University, as a chilling example of this alarming trend. By examining the specific cases, the U.S. government's justifications, and the historical context, we can begin to understand the broader implications for free speech, political dissent, and the future of U.S. foreign policy. The escalating crackdown on pro-Palestinian activism serves as a stark reminder of the fragility of civil liberties in a climate of fear and geopolitical maneuvering. Mahmoud Khalil, a Palestinian student pursuing a doctorate in sustainable development at Columbia University, found himself at the center of a deportation storm that has shaken the academic community and ignited a national debate about free speech and the limits of dissent. Khalil, a green card holder and expectant father married to a U.S. citizen, was arrested by Immigration and Customs Enforcement on March 8, 2025, and detained at the Central Louisiana ICE Processing Center. The arrest sent shockwaves through Khalil's life, tearing him away from his pregnant wife, Noor Abdallah, and disrupting his academic pursuits. Initially, ICE accused Khalil of engaging in activities aligned to Hamas, a Palestinian militant group designated as a terrorist organization by the U.S. However, the charges were later amended, focusing on Khalil's alleged failure to disclose his previous employment with the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine refugees in the Near East on his visa application. Khalil's case quickly gained national attention, drawing support from human rights organizations, legal experts, and fellow students who viewed his arrest as a blatant attempt to silence pro-Palestinian voices and stifle dissent. Represented by attorneys Amy Greer, Mark Vander Hout, and Sama Cisse, Khalil's legal team filed a habeas corpus petition challenging the legality of his detention and the government's attempts to deport him. The case of Mahmoud Khalil, while deeply concerning, is not an isolated incident. Several other individuals, including academics, researchers, and students, have faced similar accusations and threats of deportation, creating a climate of fear and uncertainty within pro-Palestinian communities. A Georgetown University researcher, whose identity remains protected due to safety concerns, was arrested and detained on his academic visa. His research on Palestinian human rights abruptly halted. In another case, a nephrologist working at Brown University, despite holding a valid visa, was deported without warning, leaving his patients and colleagues in shock and disbelief. The deportation sent ripples through the medical community, highlighting the vulnerability of foreign-born professionals, even those in highly specialized fields, to politically motivated targeting. Adding to the growing sense of unease, a Columbia University student made the difficult decision to flee to Canada after ICE agents visited her home, inquiring about her involvement in pro-Palestinian activism. These cases, taken together, paint a troubling picture of a government increasingly willing to use its immigration powers to silence dissent and punish individuals based on their political beliefs. The targeting of academics, researchers, and students, whose work often challenges dominant narratives and sheds light on human rights abuses, raises serious concerns about the shrinking space for free speech and academic freedom in the United States. Section 4. The U.S. government's justification, national security, or political pressure. The U.S. government, facing mounting criticism over the recent deportations, maintains that its actions are justified on the grounds of national security and immigration law enforcement. In the case of Mahmoud Khalil, the government argues that his alleged failure to disclose his previous employment with UNRWA on his visa application constitutes a violation of immigration law, warranting his deportation. Furthermore, the government claims that Khalil's presence in the United States poses foreign policy risks, citing his alleged ties to organizations deemed a threat to national security. However, critics argue that the government's justifications are flimsy at best, pointing to a pattern of selective enforcement and politically motivated targeting. They argue that Khalil's case, like the others, is rooted not in legitimate national security concerns, but in a desire to appease the Israeli government and silence criticism of its policies. The timing of the deportations, coinciding with increased scrutiny of Israel's human rights record and growing international support for the Palestinian cause, has fueled suspicions of a politically motivated crackdown. The government's decision to transfer Khalil to the Central Louisiana ICE Processing Center, a facility notorious for its harsh conditions and remote location, has further fueled accusations of mistreatment and a deliberate attempt to isolate him from his family and legal counsel. While the government claims that the transfer was necessary due to overcrowding and bedbug infestations, Khalil's lawyers dispute these claims, suggesting a more sinister motive to punish him and deter others from speaking out. Section 5. Unwavering Support: The U.S.-Israel Relationship and Its Critics. The recent deportations of pro-Palestinian activists have brought into sharp focus the United States' unwavering support for Israel, even in the face of growing international criticism of its policies towards the Palestinians. The U.S. government, citing shared democratic values and strategic interests, has long provided Israel with billions of dollars in military aid and diplomatic cover at the United Nations, shielding it from accountability for its actions. However, this unwavering support has come under increasing scrutiny, with critics accusing the U.S. of turning a blind eye to Israel's human rights abuses and its continued occupation of Palestinian territories. The expansion of Israeli settlements in the West Bank, the blockade of Gaza, and the displacement of Palestinian families have drawn condemnation from international human rights organizations who accuse Israel of violating international law and perpetuating a system of apartheid. The U.S. government's staunch defense of Israel, even when its actions contradict stated U.S. values of human rights and democracy, has alienated many within the American public, particularly among younger generations and progressive Democrats. The recent deportations of pro-Palestinian activists, seen by many as an attempt to silence criticism of Israel and stifle debate about its policies, have further fueled this growing discontent and raised questions about the future of the U.S.-Israel relationship.